Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into 16 of the most turbulent, most transformative years in American history. It was a period that completely reshaped the nation's politics and its identity in ways that, believe me, we still feel today.
This quote from Bill Clinton, it really gets to the heart of it all. It's the key to understanding everything we're about to talk about. See, the memories of these years, they didn't just fade away. They actually hardened into the political battle lines that define our world right now.
So, to really get how we went from the incredible confidence of the early 60s to the crisis of 1980, this is our roadmap. We're going to start at the very peak, trace how all the fractures started to appear, and then see how the aftershocks created a totally new political landscape.
Okay, let's start at the top. The mid-1960s. This was really the high watermark for American liberalism. You had President Lyndon B. Johnson in charge, and he had this huge vision for a more just and prosperous America. So Johnson had this grand vision he called the Great Society, and he pushed through this incredible wave of programs aimed at wiping out poverty and racial injustice. I mean, in its sheer ambition, it was the biggest expansion of government since the New Deal. It touched everything, from healthcare for the elderly and poor to funding for the arts.
And you know what? The public was totally on board. Johnson won a historic landslide in 1964 against the conservative Barry Goldwater. This wasn't just a win, it was a powerful mandate for this bold, liberal vision of what America could and should be.
And this optimism, it wasn't just here on Earth. The entire nation was united in this quest to reach the moon. It was this incredible symbol of American ingenuity and our ability to do the impossible. But that sense of unity, well, it was more fragile than anyone realized, and it was about to fracture.
So even as this great society was being built, these deep fractures started appearing, pulling and tearing at the very fabric of American life.
This slide just perfectly illustrates the huge problem, right? President Johnson was trying to fight two wars at the same time, a war on poverty right here at home and a war against communism over in Vietnam. But the resources, the money, the national attention needed for both, they were totally in conflict with each other. It created this deep, impossible tension.
And this division, it just fueled a massive generational revolt. Young people started to challenge all the social norms of the 1950s, creating this counterculture. It was all about long hair, new music, and fierce opposition to the war. This cultural battle, plus a rising crime rate, started to create this growing feeling of unease across mainstream America.
The tensions that had been building for years didn't just boil over. They detonated. 1968 was the year the floor just fell out from under America. I mean, just look at the sheer velocity of this collapse. First, the Tet Offensive in Vietnam exposed that the government had been lying about progress. Then Johnson, the architect of the Great Society, is forced to drop out of his own race. Then two of the nation's most inspiring leaders, Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy, are assassinated. The Democratic Party literally tears itself apart on live television. The year ends with the election of Richard Nixon, a man who promised to restore law and order for a deeply shaken nation.
The chaos of '68 didn't just end. It kind of seeped into the new decade, a decade that would be defined by this deep and growing cynicism toward our core institutions. The belief that government could actually do the right thing was just collapsing.
And the rot started right at the very top. Watergate wasn't just about politics, it was a profound breach of trust. The discovery of a criminal cover-up that was orchestrated from inside the Oval Office just confirmed everyone's worst fears about their government.
And look, these weren't just allegations. The president's own words, caught on his secret taping system, proved the whole conspiracy. This was the smoking gun. It destroyed his presidency, and it completely shattered what was left of the nation's faith in its leaders.
So while trust in government is just evaporating, the economy goes completely haywire. This new, baffling problem called stagflation emerges. Now, for decades, Americans understood a simple economic rule. If prices went up, it was because the economy was booming. But now, that rule was broken. Prices were soaring, but the economy wasn't growing, and people were losing their jobs. It was this toxic mix that defied all the economic logic of the time. And for millions of Americans, it was a daily, grinding reality that just undermined that whole post-war promise of a better life.
For the average American, this chart right here shows the pain. Your paycheck bought less every single week, and the fear of getting laid off was constant. That post-war dream of ever-increasing prosperity, it was over. If this explainer is helping you connect the dots on how these events shaped our world, please take a quick moment to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives.
The economic crisis was then compounded by a series of shocks on the world stage that made America, really for the first time, feel vulnerable and powerless.
The 1973 oil crisis hit the country like a body blow. OPEC nations cut off oil, and prices quadrupled. I mean, think about that. This led to these long, frustrating lines at gas stations, and it exposed just how dependent the entire American way of life was on foreign energy.
And then came the final televised fall of Saigon. It was this painful symbol of defeat. It closed the chapter that had cost over 58,000 American lives and had divided the nation for a decade. The war ended not with a victory, but with a retreat.
This whole national mood was captured by President Jimmy Carter. In what became known as his malaise speech, he correctly identified this crisis of confidence. But for a lot of Americans, it sounded like he was blaming them for the nation's problems, which just cemented this widespread feeling that America had truly lost its way. But here's the thing. This period of unraveling wasn't just an ending, it was also a beginning. All of this chaos and disillusionment was forging the political battle lines that would define America for the next 50 years. All this turmoil triggered a powerful conservative backlash that completely redrew the political map. The old Democratic coalition, built on labor unions and Southern whites, it fell apart. People grew alienated by the anti-war movement and the counterculture. Nixon's silent majority, those voters tired of protest and social change, became this potent new force. A newly organized religious right entered politics, and the stage was set for a fundamental shift in American government.
Which brings us right back to where we started. The conflicts of this era, over the Vietnam War, over social values, over the role of government, they didn't end in 1980. They became the permanent fault lines in American politics, the very same divisions we are still arguing about today.
So, the story of these years, it's really the origin story of the divided America we live in now. The arguments might have changed a bit, but the fundamental questions about who we are and what kind of country we want to be were forged in this fire. Thanks for watching. If you want to continue exploring the timeline of U.S. history, check out the other explainers on our channel and in this playlist.